People get confused by Web3. They're thinking, oh man, Web3 is so confusing. We have to blockchain this. We have to do all this, and it's like, dude, just plug in
Yeah,
Hive accounts, and
right.
now you go from an app to a DApp because you now give ownership of the account to the individual. You become a skin. It doesn't matter if you're centralized or not. It does not matter. You have no control over their account or their data. You are now a decentralized application, regardless of how centralized you are on the outside.
Exactly.
Just plug in Hive. That's all you have to do to become Web3. That is Web3.
Yeah.
If you're a median, you get accounts, you get the payment layer, you get all of these things, and it just keeps adding and adding and adding. So it's not like, oh, this is it. It's like this is just the beginning. So you're getting on the ground floor at the beginning of something that's going to add tremendous value already, and it's just going to keep adding value the more you integrate. But the time now is to get familiar with this tech and
Sure.
start contributing.
All right, let's move on to the next one here. There's a really good tweet put out by Hive creators this week, and I want to give a shout out to Soy Enrique, who's running a lot of that stuff. He says, creating protocols that help applications connect to the Hive blockchain, or that those applications can integrate a system to register with Hive accounts, is something that would greatly help the adoption of Hive and Web3 and blockchain. And so, I was having a chat with him and saying, what we need to do on Hive is we should focus a little bit more of our effort, maybe not all of it, of course. So up to now, we've been focusing on blog post earn and bringing on individual content creators, which has been great, but it's not been the most successful thing, in my opinion, and it has led to a little bit of retention issue as well. What I think we should be doing now is, and we're basically there already now, we've got the things in place. We should be also approaching existing platforms, and saying to them, hey, this is how easy it is to integrate a Hive account into your platform. And with that account, you get immutable communities, you get tokenomic systems, you get resource credit systems, you get the ability to upvote, you get immutable text storage, you're going to get immutable video and other file storage with the Speak network. You get union indexes that can make that content available on other platforms as well. So there's all these features you get with the Hive account, and plus no ICO, no CEO, autonomous, no owner. So for them to recreate that themselves, for the individual platforms to recreate that themselves, it's going to cost them millions and millions of dollars and months of work. What we should be doing is going to these platforms and saying, hey, we can save you all that. Here's how you integrate Hive accounts. It's going to take you 3 weeks worth of work, or 5 weeks worth of work maybe. It might cost you $50,000 at most to do, in terms of paying your engineers to do it, and it's done. You've got yourself a Web3 platform. You're integrated into Web3. I'd like to think that we can get to a place with things like Hive creators. I think they're going to make an effort now to make a web page that explains to developers and existing platforms how they can implement Hive accounts and what the benefits are. So then we as a community, the individual members, can go and approach these platforms and say, hey, check this website out, see how easy it is to integrate a Hive account, and go for that approach. Because once you get a platform, you might get 10, 15, 20,000 users by default, right? So instead of us approaching individually these 20,000 users and getting them on one by one, you just integrate the tech into the platform, and now you automatically have just onboarded another 20,000 users,
Yeah, we have a system that's set up to hit a tipping point, and what I mean by that is, if you onboard one app, that app is now part of the Hive ecosystem. For every app you onboard, those apps are one and the same. Now they're a part of an ecosystem, and there's going to be a tipping point where there's so many apps that are on Hive. The ones that aren't on Hive are going to be detrimental, and they're going to have to mess with Hive because Hive will be everywhere. And they're like, oh, we're outside of the boundary where we don't need to be. We need to get in the system where everyone else is. So, this is one app at a time. The more apps, the more builders we have on Hive, the more things you can do. It becomes a city, right? It started as a small town. It builds into a city. Before you know it, it keeps building and building. The more people here, the more things to do, the more it becomes a detriment to not be a part of the system. So we have to reach that, that's the goal, to reach that tipping point, and then the market will do the rest for us. Then it'll get to a point where it's like a domino effect.
Yeah, exactly. Shadow's Pub says, imagine bringing Medium to Hive. Their payment system sucks now. It could greatly improve by doing that. Yeah, I see it more as imagine integrating Hive accounts into Medium, right? And then so if there's people that know, I'm sure there's plenty of bloggers on Hive, so I'm sure there's people that know people that work in Medium. It's like, how can we approach those people and say, hey, look, you can integrate these accounts. You can now become an independent Web3 system without having to build it all yourself. And it's going to save you all this engineering time and effort, and it's going to protect. It's going to give your users digital sovereignty. I'm convinced that that's one of the approaches that we should be taking, because once you do that, you might even get to a point where, at some point in the future, where people are using Hive accounts and they don't even really know that they're using them. It kind of becomes like a HTTPS protocol where it's just something that people use and they don't even know that they're using it. It's just like they log into Medium and now they've got all this immutability and this ability to monetize that they didn't have before.
People get confused by Web3. They're thinking, oh man, Web3 is so confusing. We have to blockchain this. We have to do all this, and it's like, dude, just plug in Hive accounts, right? And now you go from an app to a DApp, because you now give ownership of the account to the individual. You become a skin. It doesn't matter if you're centralized or not. It does not matter. You have no control over their account or their data. You are now a decentralized application, regardless of how centralized you are on the outside.
Exactly.
Just plug in Hive. That's all you have to do to become Web3. That is Web3. If you're a median, you get accounts, you get the payment layer, you get all of these things, and it just keeps adding and adding and adding. So it's not like, oh, this is it. It's like, this is just the beginning. So you're getting on the ground floor at the beginning of something that's going to add tremendous value already, and it's just going to keep adding value the more you integrate. But the time now is to get familiar with this tech and start contributing.
Taskmaster says Half should help a lot with this. It will make development and database management a lot easier. Yes, of course it will. That's going to be massive for Hive, I think. But I really hope that we can move the community's thinking to this way. And I'm not saying me and you for this conversation. I'm just hoping that this idea spreads through the community. That the community members start thinking, hold on a minute, instead of like, because I hear a lot of stories where people onboard individual content creators. It's like, oh yeah, that's really cool, well done. And it's so much effort and energy, and then some of them stay, some of them don't. And it's great work, but it's a lot of energy. And I'm like, you could expend that same energy, but you could onboard like 2 or 3 platforms, and then by default, you just got 10, 15, 20, 100,000 users, right? And that's where I want to go with this. And like Taskmaster saying, you combine this with Half and people like Shadows Pubs who are well connected in the blogging industry, and all of a sudden you can start onboarding some of these platforms.
And you can think the same with the communities too. Like, what is Leo Finance? Is Leo Finance an app, or is it a community? It's both, kind of. These communities are going to turn into apps. And one of the best things you can do, you don't have to go after the million community. Go after the people with 10,000, 5,000, 1,000, 500. You get a dozen of them before you know it, things start popping. So.
Yeah, and I mean, with the thing that we released the other week, the decentralized breakaway communities, where PS Origins put a video out showing how you can create your own Web3 platform for free, just by running your own server and running your own website, running a command prompt on your computer and typing in like 4 or 5 lines of code. You can now run your own Web3 platform with your own community in it, right? It's just a fork of Xsensi. It works really well. It's been working with something called Starter Kit DAO for a while now that we've been testing with them. And anyone can do this now. Anyone can do this. You don't need to spend a lot of dev time to set up your own platform now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is coming. This is coming. And the other thing I want to say here as well, Dan, is there's other people building Web 2.5 solutions, Web 5 solutions, Web 5 divided by 2 solutions. But I don't know any yet that have still managed to do it properly and actually distribute a token in a fair way and actually distribute governance rights. They just haven't managed to do it. So all these, the risk for other platforms is if they decide to implement other Web 2.5 solutions that aren't quite Web 3, they don't know and they do it and now they're committed, and it's like, shit, if they integrate Hive, they are actually getting the real deal. It's legit Web 3,
It's like they spent so much time and effort trying to copy Hive that at the end they get lazy with governance and they're just like, whatever. The governance is like the part that you have to get right. The technology is useless. It's like a weapon in the wrong hands. You have to make sure the governance, that's first and foremost. It's the hardest part, obviously, and it's the part that you can't solve with money. People like to gloss over that one because you can't force it into reality if you want to make your own system. You see a lot of Frankensteins out there that just don't quite make sense, and then you realize, well, that's the best they could do in the circumstance, in the route they took. They decided to go the wrong way, or at least a long way, And it doesn't make sense on paper, but people aren't technical enough, or they don't think about governance enough. Like, these things are not nuanced. It takes a lot of time, and your average person who doesn't put in the time, they just don't understand it. And here we are with Web 2.5 dominating so far.
Yeah. It'll come though. And to me, even if it doesn't explode, right, the point that my main reason for being here is providing the tools, right? I want these tools provided. I want them provided properly. And then whoever chooses to use it after that, it's up to them. The point is that the tools need to be out there, and they need to be done properly and correctly. They need to be done in a fair, decentralized way, so that you actually have the freedom of speech in the future. It's happening. It's happening whether Web 2.5 finds out about it or not.
Yeah, if the tools are out there, and if people don't decide to use them, I would still be happy, because we did what we could have done. It's like, well, we were destined to be fucked. So there's nothing we could have done. This is like, at least we know. It's like doing that one thing. You're like, I don't know if I should do it. It's like, well, you should do it just in case. Even if you don't like it, at least you don't like it. You're not going to be thinking, what if? So it's sort of that situation. We got to get the tools out there and give, let's see what happens. At least if they're there, something fun could possibly happen. But if we don't, it's just going to be pretty fucking dark and scary in the future.
Exactly. So. Yeah. And isn't it interesting that, to me, it's interesting that the likes of Jack Dorsey can work on this, right? And we know that if this was truly Web3, it's a risk to the system, right? It's inherently a risk, because it takes control away from the Web2 power brokers, right?
Yep.
Well, if this guy is building Web3 and he's not been prosecuted or anything like that yet, then is it really
been smeared?
It hasn't been smeared. No one hates him. Right? It's like even with Musk taking over. So this is a great indicator. Musk takes over Twitter. I'm not saying I'm a massive fan of Musk or anything, but he takes over Twitter, starts talking about free speech, and he gets smeared. There's people coming out saying all sorts of things about him. He's now Mr. Hated in the media, right? The media hate him. Well, Dorsey's come out with Web 5, and the media are fine with it. Are you kidding me? Musk taking over Twitter is nothing. It's not even the same scale of magnitude as releasing true Web 3, 4, or 5, right? It's such a threat to them. Yeah, Dorsey can do this, and he's fine. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's the same reason I think some of these coins are going to slip through and get favorable regulation over others. So it's going to be like a boys' club. Yeah. And you're going to be like, whoa, how are they getting treated so special? And then free cards are going to be used by banks in the mainstream. And that's why I never said Web 2.5 was a bad investment. I just said it's an investment that I really have. It's impossible to have a strong conviction on a Web 2.5 bet unless you are an insider, because they are the ones dictating it. So it's not like when I look at Hive, I can see the merit. I can see how it can survive in the wild. I can see, oh, okay, I don't need to rely on any one person. But when you have a Web 2.5 bet, it could be like, push a button, we want Solana to be the world. It's like they have control. So it's like there's no skill involved. You're just blindly guessing. And that's what I think. People who take Web 2.5 bets are blindly guessing, or they're insiders. And people who take Web 3 bets are actually reliant on skill and finding things that are actually make sense and can survive. So that's sort of my investment thesis here.
Sure. And to me, it's also a moral question as well. I try to invest in things morally,
Yep.
And I think true Web 3 is the moral route here. Whether it makes you money immediately or not is irrelevant to me.
It's hard to be passionate if you're hurting people, unless you're a psycho
or misinformed.